Okay, folks, today we are talking pecan pie, or a pecan pie tart, I like to call it. It's my latest and greatest invention. This is on the keto, sometimes you come up with recipes and they're okay, they're good. But this one here, yeah, it tastes like pecan pie. It eats like pecan pie. It is, in every sense of the word, a pecan pie filling. It's just the crust is a little bit different. It is a chocolate almond crust, and it is really good. It's just really good here. I'm going to bring out my southern accent to cook this here dish. But anyway, folks, here's what I got. And we're going to be cooking the tart right here in this little bitty mini springform pan. As you can see, I cut out around the parchment paper to stick on the bottom. That way, when it's done, you can get it up off that little round disc out there, or else it's just going to be sticking to that little disc. It's hard to get out, so you're going to end up, scraping and licking on that disc. And ain't no shame in that. And I'll do it too. But I just found that putting parchment paper on there, you can just lift it off there and set it on a nice little plate and make it presentable. So what we're going to start off doing now is we're going to make this crust here. And so what I got in this bowl is I just got 2 tablespoons of Kerrygold salted butter. I'm using salted butter, so the salt that I actually add to it's going to be a little bit less. But anyway, this is 2 tablespoons of salted butter. And in this salted butter right here, I have a tablespoon, just to make sure, a tablespoon of powdered monk fruit sweetener. I just buy the granulated stuff, and then I put it in a little coffee grinder and I powder it. Because I ain't going to pay that expensive price for that powdered stuff, but I don't have to. And I'm going to mix that all up into the butter. Because the butter is warm, so this will help dissolve that sugar. It's not sugar, I'm sorry. It's monk fruit. Okay, that's all in there. So what I'm going to do now is I got my almond flour here. And this measuring cup I got here is a 1/2 cup. And it's only got a 1/2 cup of the 1/2 cup, so it's a 1/4 cup. Just a 1/4 cup of the almond flour. That's all it's going to be. And then we're going to mix that in there. Sometimes it takes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, depending on how packed that cup is. I'm going to add a little bit more. So yeah, about 1/2 cup of the almond flour is what Tuck to do this. Yeah, it's good right there. Going to mix that up. And this is going to be a softer, it's not going to be like a graham cracker crust where it's just barely, where it's like that. As you can see, it's kind of like a dough, almost like a cookie dough. And into that, I got some cacao powder here. I'm just going to add a tablespoon in there. And this gives it that nice chocolatey flavor. Just a nice level tablespoon. Just put it on in there. Come on now, get out there. There we go. Zip that back up. And we're going to mix it all up in here until this stuff turns into a nice brown, dark chocolate color. And the good thing about this crust here is you don't bake it. We're going to put it into the spring form, and then we're going to set it in the freezer while we're making the filling for the pecan pie. And so it's going to be frozen by the time we get it out of there. And so when it bakes, it don't overcook. All right, get that all mixed up there good. As you can see the consistency of it, it's nice and pliable. So yeah, about 1/2 cup almond flour, 2 tablespoons of melted Kerrygold butter. You want it a little bit warm. And a tablespoon of powdered monk fruit sweetener, or whatever sweetener you like. I use monk fruit, and so if you use a different sweetener, I can't guarantee the recipe will come out the same. So because this is my recipe with the ingredients I use, so if you use something different, it might come out a little bit different. And also, I forgot to mention that we got our oven heated up to 350 degrees because this is going to bake it for 40 to 45 minutes at 350 degrees. So yeah, so I got my little dish here now. And now I'm just going to take this here batter, our crust here, in my hands, manual food processors, gotta love them. And we're just going to squish it down in there, just like you would a regular graham cracker crust. We want to bring it up to the sides. We want to bring it up the sides about I don't know, half an inch. That way we'll have a little bowl down in there to hold our pecan pie filling. And tap it down, and I'll show you what it looks like here when I'm done. You want to make sure we get it all. You want the bottom of it, the bottom part of the pan, you want a nice, I don't know what that is, 3/16 of an inch maybe? You want a pretty good layer there, because this is liquid and it will go through a little bit, so make sure you got a little bit thicker. You want to make it nice and neat for when it comes out of this little spring form pan here, it'll look pretty. But we're going to go ahead and get her done here. All right, almost finished here. Squishing that in there. You want to make sure it's patted down nice and good in there. You want when you look down in there, you'll see the edges that come up that are forming a little bowl, and you want them to be about 1/4 inch thick. So go ahead and squish her down there. And it don't have to be perfectly same height all the way around. Again, this is a tart. And so it's going to be a little, it's a little creative. So, okay, I got that done. I don't know if you can see it, but that's what it looks like. It's about a 1/2 inch high, it's a 1/2 inch deep, and it's in there. And there's what we got. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the freezer, and then we're going to get started on the filling. And what I got in my little Pyrex mixing bowl right here is I got 3 tablespoons of Kerrygold salted butter. And I'm going to throw this in the microwave, and I'm going to melt it down, and we're going to have it warm, and I will be back just a second. Okay, folks, the butter's melted down. I put it in the microwave for 40 seconds because you want this butter to be warm. And so what I'm going to do now is into the butter. What I've got here is this is where the measurements get kind of tricky. I got 3/4 of a 1/2 cup. So what that means is I got a 1/2 cup measuring cup here, and it's only 3/4 of the way full. So 3/4 of a 1/2 cup is what this is here. This is just a Lakanto brown sugar that I put into the coffee grinder and made it powder. And this butter is hot, so I'm going to throw that all in there, and then we're going to give it a good mix. Make sure it all gets dissolved in here. If you put it in there, the brown sugar or the brown sweetener in there without it being powdered, you wind up with a little grainy taste in the pecan pie tart there. And so we don't want that. So we're just going to go ahead and powder that up and put it in this warm butter. Okay, so that is all mixed up real good. So what I'm going to add next is I got my Lakanto Maple syrup. We're going to add the same measurement, 3/4 of a 1/2 cup. So a 1/2 cup, 3/4 of the way full. I wrote it down here. I did do the metric because it's a little bit more precise, but it wasn't right. So anyway, you can take a 1/2 cup, 3/4 of the way full. That's what you want, 3/4 of a 1/2 cup. When I actually put it in the description below, I'm going to put the metrics in there because I got the metrics on a word processing sheet in there where I've been keeping notes on my recipes. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. So 3/4 of a 1/2 cup. So yeah, it's 1/2 cup, and it's about 1/4 inch from the top. And we're going to toss that in here. Get every last drop of it. All right, now we're going to give that another good old mix up here. All right. What we're going to put in here next, that's all mixed up, is I got a 1/4 cup of pecan halves that I chopped up right here. And then for the top of it, I got 6 pecan halves, whole pecan halves I'm going to put on top. But to go into filling, it's a 1/4 cup of pecan halves chopped up. So it's going to make about a 1/2 cup of chopped pecans. We're going to put that in there. Oop, get that on out of there. Ooh, it's already tasting good. We're going to mix that in there. And then we also got 1 whole egg. We're going to put the white, the yolk, and everything in here. No shell though. Of course, with the crunchy nuts in there. Might not know the difference. And at first I was thinking about, I'm gonna beat that all up in here. Should I roast the pecans in the oven before I put them in here? Give a little roast pecan. I guess you could if you want to, but the thing with that is, when you roast the nut, the oils come out of it. And so if you're roasting these pecans first, you're gonna lose some of the oil out of the pecan. And so that might affect this pecan tart here. So I didn't roast them. So that way they're in here. When they get hot, any oil that comes out of these pecans will get in this batter. And with the egg and the egg white in there, it's going to start to thicken up this mixture here. But you want to give it a good beat, a couple minutes to make sure it gets nice and airy. Okay, and once you got that done, the last thing we're going to add in there, actually not the last thing, but one of the last things, we're going to put a teaspoon of vanilla. All right, give it a good mix. In there, let me go ahead and get a little bit of, I'm just going to put just a pinch, just a pinch of maybe not even a quarter teaspoon of salt in here, just to give it a little bit extra salt, because remember that butter is salted, so we don't need a lot of salt in there. Give that a mix up in there, get that salt dissolved. And the last thing we're going to add in here is right here, it's xanthan gum. I am going to put just a quarter of a teaspoon in there, or maybe a quarter of a teaspoon, about one, I believe I remember the grams right, it's like 1.3 grams of this in here. So this is a half a teaspoon. I'm gonna put half of this in there, so a quarter of a teaspoon of the xanthan gum. And this is a must, you gotta have it, or else, because you gotta have some kind of thickener. And so you just wanna sprinkle that all around in there, evenly over there. You don't want to just dump it in there. All right, there we go, quarter of a teaspoon. That's going to make it nice and thick and get that pecan pie filling there. And then you got to give this a good mix, because sometimes this xanthan gum at times like little bitty lumps and clumps, and you don't want that. So just go ahead and give it a good mix. And folks, that is it for the ingredients in here. This is our filling. I mean, it's right now it's very liquidy, but when this cooks, it starts to thicken up, and that xanthan gum does its magic there. And give it a good beat here. Make sure I ain't forgetting nothing here, and I got everything in there. And so what we're going to do now is our crust, it should be frozen enough to put our ingredients in there. So let me go ahead and get some of this stuff out of the way here. Get our crust out of the freezer. Yep, that's it. So our crust is nice and hard. As you can see right there, the butter solidified, and so now it's a hard crust. And so what we're going to do now is we're just going to pour this in here. We want to make sure we rake out all the pecans on here. Get them all in there. And so what you're going to have now is the batter. It comes up above that crust. So don't worry about it. You're not going to see the crust, because it's going to be just a quarter inch from the top of this little 6-inch Tart spring form pan here. And just give it a little bit of a nudge like that, little drop down. Just like making a cheesecake. And that's going to get everything settled. It's going to get all the air bubbles out of there if there's any down there. And what we're going to do with that now is I'm going to get a pie pan and put this in here. Because if this boils over in the oven, it can make a big mess. So always put it on a cookie sheet or a pie pan, whatever you got. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to put this in the oven, 350 degree oven, for, like I said, between 40 and 45 minutes or so. Almost forgot to put the topping on. So we're going to go ahead and put these pecans, these whole halves here, just arrange them around in some kind of visual pleasantry here. So, right. And I always go with lucky number 7. All right, there it is right there. Now I'm going to stick this in the oven, and then we'll come back after it's done, and I'll show you what you do, because we're going to take it out of the oven when it's done and let it set for 1 minute on the counter. And then we're going to take a thin bladed knife, and we're going to go around the edges of it to separate it, for when it cools down it won't stick. And then after it does that, we're going to let it set on the counter for about 30 minutes to cool down a little bit. and then we're gonna stick it in the ice box, and it's gonna have to sit there for minimum, this is the hard part, minimum 2 hours. The best is overnight, but when this is all out of the oven, and just before I put it in the fridge, I'll come out and I'll show you what it looks like after it's done. So I'll be back in just like now. Okay folks, it has been exactly 42 minutes. I have tucked the tart out of the oven and it's been cooling for 2 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you what it looks like. When it comes out of the oven, it's gonna be a little puffy, which is like all things, but then when it cools, it's gonna start settling back down, flattening out, and it's going to be firm up. So I'm gonna switch the camera here, and then you're gonna see what I'm doing here. So just give me 1 second. Here comes the Jiggly Wiggly. Okay, you should be able to see that now. And so as you can see, right, it is, let's forget the shadows. It has done, it's a little bit soft in the middle like that, which is basically what it needs to be. And now I'm going to take this little knife here. That should be a little cool enough to cool now, and just go around the edges like that. For as it cools down, for it won't stick to the side of the tart pan for the spring form. You can probably bake this in like a big ramekin if you wanted to, or any kind of like a miniature pie pan. But for this is what I use because it's just easier to get out. You put it in a pie pan, a little miniature pie pan or ramekin, it might be a little bit difficult to get out. But this thing here, once it cools down, you just, you know, pop the ring and it all comes apart real nice and easy. Okay, so I've got that all the way around the edges out here. I went down to where you can just barely feel the crust there. That way when it starts to cool, it's not going to stick. There we go. Okay folks, it's still right there. That's where I'm going to leave it. I put it on a cooling rack with a paper towel underneath it, because remember that crust had a lot of butter. It's got a lot of butter in there and there's no crust to hold it, so it's going to be dripping while it's cooling, which is perfectly fine. So always make sure you got it, a towel to catch that dripping. And so I'm going to now wait another 20 minutes, and then I'm going to stick this into the refrigerator and let it set for a couple of hours, and then we'll be back to cut it and show you what it looks like after it's done. All right, I shall be back shortly. Okay folks, it has finished completely cooling down. And so let's go ahead and take it out of this little spring form pan here and see what we got. There it goes, it came off. All right folks, there you go. A pecan tart. As you can see, it's about 1 inch thick. It's nice and firm. And let's go ahead and get it off here. See with the paper on there, that came off there real easy, so it didn't stick. And so you just want to remember to get that paper off there, because that ain't tasting no good. So just peel that paper off. And as you can see, the butter's still in the crust, but that's all the goodness. That's that pecan pie stuff coming out of there. And so let me grab a knife and we'll go ahead and cut it and show you what it looks like underneath or inside. So yeah, to bake this in a different dish besides the spring form pan, it is possible, I guess. It's just, like I said, getting it out is going to be hard. So, okay, so let's go ahead and cut into this and see what we got. There we go. There we go. As you can see all the pecan pie filling in there and the pecans, and that just looks fantastic. Cut me off a little bitty corner of it here. See what it tastes like. There you go, it sets up pretty good, folks. And folks, that tastes just like a pecan pie. It eats and feels like a pecan pie. That is just a fantastic little dessert, and I'm happy to share it with you folks. So if you try it, let me know what you think. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and share these videos and like them, or whatever you want to do with it. Just, I ain't doing this to be famous. I just shoot these videos with my little iPhone here, and just something fun I got, you know. As a Christian, this is the way I love on people, you know. Food is my love. I love to cook, so by sharing with others, you know, I'm just loving on people. So until next time, folks, God bless and good eats.